Hi, and welcome back to Pierogi by Kelly. Today I'll be teaching you to make a cheesy beef filling. Meat pierogi are one of the most popular pierogi and traditional in both Poland and the US. Traditionally, meat pierogi are filled with some type of ground beef. In this recipe, which is one of my favorite pierogi fillings, I use a combination of ground beef and cheese. This recipe from my babci in particular tastes very similar to a ground beef taco or empañada. As my dad always says, cooking is an art, so feel free to add your own spices. Now let's begin. Here we have 1 large onion, 2 tablespoons of butter, 1.5 pounds of ground beef, 1 clove of garlic, which I crushed using a garlic press. However, you can also mince it using a knife, or you could put it through a food processor. 3 ounces of cream cheese, which was cut into 1-inch cubes. Salt and pepper, which will be added to taste. And 1/2 cup of cheese. I like to use a Mexican blend cheese, which includes Monterey Jack, cheddar, and a Cerdero cheese. However, you can use a combination of whatever cheese you like. If you'd like to use 2 different types of cheese, you could add in 1/4 cup of each. But just make sure that it's shredded. First, I'm going to mince the onion. And I try to make sure to try to get this pretty thin, so that when it is in the pierogi filling, it is not super thick. As I'm finishing up here, one thing I would recommend, especially if you find that your eyes are super sensitive to onions and every time you cut one or even open one you start crying, I would recommend using the food processor and just putting the onion in there for a few seconds. Now the onions are finely chopped, I'm going to put the butter into the pan here. And the pan has just been on about medium heat, and I'm going to let the butter just simmer in here. And in with the butter, I'm going to add our onions. And we're just going to saute the onions until they're translucent. When you're doing this, make sure to occasionally stir them around with a wooden spoon, just to make sure that they don't burn. These not only look ready, but another telltale sign of onions being ready is their smell, and they smell ready. So I'm just going to take my ground beef and I'm going to put that right in there with the onions. And additionally, I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit. Here we're just going to be browning the beef, and I would recommend making it very ground down for your pierogi filling, just so you can get more beef in each of your pierogi. But I would recommend using a spatula like this one. Just kind of poke at and almost chop up your ground beef a little bit more. So this is now cooked all the way through. I've turned the heat off and I'm just going to drain it. I've now drained it, and as you can see, there's no more of the liquid in there. I'm going to turn it back on to about a medium heat. Now I'm going to add in my crushed garlic. And I'm just going to be stirring that around. Okay, so now that the garlic is all mixed in, I'm going to add salt and pepper. Now, the thing about the salt and pepper is it is to taste. So I'm just going to put a bunch in, mix it, and see what I think. Now that that's mixed, I'm just going to try a little bit and see whether I need some more or not. And I think I do. So I'm just going to go through again and add a little bit more. Now that I've added enough salt and pepper that to my tasting, I'm going to now add the cream cheese. Now that the cream cheese is in there, I'm just going to stir that around. And now that the cream cheese is fully stirred in, I'm going to go ahead and add in the 1/2 cup of shredded cheese. And then this, again, I'm just going to stir around until the cheese is evenly distributed and melty. As you can see, the cheese has all melted and it's beginning to stick together. Kind of almost like a Rice Krispie treat. So I'm just going to try it. That is perfect. And we're going to let it cool completely before adding it into my pierogi. Okay, so while this is cooling, I'm going to work on my dough and create discs that I will use my filling to fill to create my pierogi. If you're looking on the dough process or how to create dough, I would recommend going and watching my first video, which is linked in the description. Okay, so now that I have my discs and my filling has completely cooled, I'm going to put my filling into the discs to create my pierogi. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I'm going to be using a teaspoon to fill my pierogi. And that is because this is a more solid filling. So I'm just going to begin by putting a teaspoon of filling into my pierogi. And I'm just going to repeat that process. I'm just going to seal the pierogis by pressing them. And then after all of them are sealed, I'm going to boil them. And then I'm going to saute a few in butter to prepare to eat. If you would like more about that type of process, including crimping and sealing them and the cooking process, check out my first video, How to Make Pierogi, which is linked in the description. And I wanted to mention that if you have leftover filling, you can put it into some type of Tupperware and store it in the fridge for a few days. They are all done and they look delicious. Let's cut in. Okay, let's try one. These smell so good. This is definitely one of my favorite type of pierogi. Thank you so much for watching and good luck making pierogi.